Welcome to One More Hour, the podcast all about backyard ultras, timed races, and the ultra running mindset of going one more. If you're an ultra runner, a trail or ultra runner curious about the format, or just someone who loves to test your limits, you're in the right place. I'm Jackie Wilson, an ultra marathon and marathon run coach, trail runner, outdoor enthusiast, and backyard ultra expert. On this show, I'll bring you stories, strategies, and conversations with runners, race directors, experts, and more to help you go further, dig deeper, and keep going when everything in you says stop. Thank you so much for joining me for some yards. Let's get started with one more. Welcome back to the One More Hour podcast, your insider's guide to backyard ultras, last runner standing races, timed events, and the mindset of going one more. If you're training for a backyard ultra, there is one workout that I think every runner should do before race day. Not because it's the hardest workout that you'll ever complete or the longest one, not because it's going to magically make you fitter, but it's going to expose every weakness in your backyard game before race day. Yes, ultimately, your first backyard ultra and every race after it are going to be your best learning experiences, but we want to figure out how can we practice that before race day, especially when we're not able to race like every single weekend, right? So today we're going to talk about the backyard ultra simulation. I'm going to walk you through exactly how I have my athletes approach these simulations, what we're actually trying to learn, and the mistakes that turn these workouts into nothing more than an overnight long run. So we're gonna cover it all. This is exactly what I talk to my athletes about when they're going to be doing a simulation, and then how we kind of talk about it afterwards to figure out what we need to work on. So in the last month or so, I've had 3 different athletes do a backyard simulation. Some did it two of them did it overnight, one did it during the day. All were different lengths. And as I was just putting my notes together for 2 of them, I realized this would make a great podcast episode because I think a lot of runners approach these simulations the wrong way. And what I mean by that is they think, I need to prove that I can run for 10 hours, or they see how many yards they can complete. And they're treating it as a race. They're treating it as a fitness test. And that's not the point of a backyard simulation. A backyard simulation is not a fitness test. It's a skills test. You already know you're fit enough to keep running easy for hours, especially with the format. That's what your physical training should instill in you, the base of fitness that you already have. What we need to focus on is being a better backyard runner. So think of yourself as a scientist. You have 60 minutes to complete this loop and to do whatever you need to do back at camp. That's not something we practice every single weekend when we're doing our long runs, right? When you think about foot care, nutrition, hydration, like yes, some of those things we have been doing in practice for your long runs. I tell all my athletes, no matter what they're training for, from the half marathon up through ultras, is your training is practice for the real thing. And we want to start as early as possible, knowing what our nutrition is, knowing what our hydration is, knowing what our foot care is, so you can focus on the physical training in your training. You can focus on your long run workouts. You can focus on your workouts during the week, right? We don't want to be doing all of these things at once and trying to figure them all out and not have the time to dedicate to our training for the PR, distance, or time, whatever your goal is for the race. With the backyard ultra, you are focused on skills. So you know that you can run far. You don't know how far, and that's one of the hardest things behind the backyard ultra, is that uncertainty of how far can I actually run? What is it like to run for 18 hours? And when we think about all of the other aspects of the backyard, those are the things we need to figure out in order to go further. Because your mind, your nutrition, your foot care and nutrition are the top 2 reasons why people DNF ultras. Along with those 2 is the third one is is your mindset. Your mind is going to convince your body that you're done. Your body is far from done, but we have to practice those three things. We have to figure them out. We have to figure out transitions. We need to figure out what we're actually doing back at camp. We need to create a strong mind that's fueled by good nutrition and hydration and problem solving so that we can go even further. And we don't even have to tell our body that it can go further because everything is going further. Everything feels good. So backyard simulation is not about testing your fitness and seeing how far you can actually run. A backyard simulation is about becoming a better backyard ultra. It's about seeing yourself as a scientist and collecting data and figuring out, okay, what can I learn that will help me when this actually matters during my backyard? What does my nutrition look like? What do my transitions look like? What does my foot care look like after 12 hours? It's hard to do these things in training, right? You're not going out for a 12 to 18 hour run weekend after weekend after weekend to practice them. If you can finish the simulation with pages of notes, you've had a successful day. I know that can seem frustrating for a lot of runners, but you want data, you want feedback, you want things that you can fix in training when you have adequate time to work on them. You don't want these notes on race day. Yes, use them for your next backyard ultra, use them for your next race, but don't show up to your first backyard ultra with having not tested any of this stuff. If you finish with nothing more than a mileage total, or I ran for 18 hours during my simulation, you've probably missed out on a very big opportunity to test some things out. So again, this is where it gets tricky and runners think that it's about fitness. A lot of runners have nutrition, foot care, hydration, caffeine strategies, etc. figured out for a 4-hour long run, right? You can go out weekend after weekend after weekend and nail it down, whether it's an easy effort long run or a long run workout, especially if you're using your pacing strategy of run walks like you will for the backyard. However, you want to get to a point where you're challenging nutrition, hydration, your mindset, right? You want to challenge yourself so things go wrong and you have a problem to solve. You want to problem solve before race day. It's another exercise that I give my athletes is, okay, create a T chart. Write down all of the things on the left side that could go wrong in your race. And then on the right side, write down solutions to them. You don't have to do it all in one shot, all in one sitting. Write down all the problems. Your brain is going to be thinking about them when you're sleeping, when you're eating. It's going to be working in the background, figuring out, okay, what can the solution be or solutions be for this problem? And it helps you tremendously when you get to race day because you've already problem solved. You've already been through these scenarios in your head to set yourself up for success. This is ultra running. It's a huge jigsaw puzzle, and that's why I love it so much. So you have to ride that line between causing problems so you can figure out solutions. You can figure out what's going to work for you on race day without pushing too far, without without making it a fitness test to the point of overtraining, or coming to an injury, reaching burnout before you've even reached race day. Again, ultimately, your first backyard ultra and every race after that will be your best way to learn and problem solve, but we can't race all the time and expect our best every single time. So you either need to run backyard ultras and set limits on yourself, like, okay, I'm going to run until midnight, or I'm going to run for 12 hours or 16 hours or 24 hours, depending on your fitness level, your goals, your training, what you're expecting to do in the backyard, what your coach thinks you can do in the backyard, so that it's reasonable, right? Or create your own simulation to start practicing these skills. So we're going to talk about all the different things you can practice in your backyard simulation, whether that's an official race or creating your own. We're going to talk about pacing, nutrition, hydration, transition times, sleep, caffeine, foot care, gear, night running, all of the things, because we want to take what race day is going to be like, and we want to ask ourselves questions about each of those categories in what we want to work on, what we want to simulate, what we want to think about, what we want to problem solve, what problems we want to create. Like, if you are someone who does not get blisters during your long runs, all goes on race day. That's the only time that I've ever gotten blisters, is during my backyard ultra at like hour 16 or 15 for my second one. Nothing. Foot care was completely fine in my first backyard ultra. No blisters whatsoever until I got to my second backyard ultra. That's not something that you create in training. And you can show up completely naive about it, right? Like, I don't get blisters. I don't have any black toenails. I don't miss any toenails. I don't need a foot care routine. You do. Foot care is preventative, both from, if you do get blisters, you can take the short-term approach of using something like salty britches and taping your feet, but then also thinking about the long-term solution of, okay, blisters, black toenails are a symptom to a bigger problem, which leads back to foot strength and foot function. We had a episode all about foot care. Let's see if I have it written down. Episode 18 was with Tanya. She is amazing. She's a PT, specializes in foot care for runners. I'll definitely go listen to that episode. She talks all about fixing your feet. Her book is behind my laptop right now, so I'm not going to grab it. But she's a wealth of information. We dive all into it on the podcast, but it's something that is largely overlooked in runners who either do not have any foot problems at all, or they're using missing toenails as a bragging right, and they just think that it's something that's normal in running. It has been normalized, but it is not normal. It is a problem. If you are getting blisters or if you are missing toenails, there's a larger problem at bay that we want to fix ahead of time. So these are things that we want to think about of, okay, how are my feet actually going to feel at hour 10? Will I have blisters? Will any of my toenails start to hurt? Do I need to figure out a solution for race day? We want problems to happen in the backyard simulation so that they don't happen during the race. So let's start with pacing. This is probably the biggest lesson for marathoners coming into the backyard format, or if you're like running fast, shorter trail races, racing 50Ks, or if you've only been a really fast ultra runner, this is where the problem comes in. So I coach a lot of runners who come from the marathon setting PRs, and they want to figure out something new, or they want to get into the ultra space. They're very competitive and they want to run fast. And when they show up to their first backyard ultra, if they have not practiced pacing, it becomes a problem. So yes, fitness is a wonderful thing, but depending on your easy pace on the roads, what your marathon, half marathon, 5K, 10K paces are, running super easy, 12 minutes per mile, 11 minutes per mile, hiking the uphills can be extremely difficult for a lot of runners. So they accidentally run too fast, even though it is an easy effort for them, an easy pace. Like, it's not because they're trying to, or it's because they can, right? So if you can comfortably run an 8-minute mile all day, it's surprisingly difficult to convince yourself to run 11, 12-minute paces. Your brain's going to keep on saying, like, this is too slow. You don't need to walk. This is super easy. And the thing behind the backyard, right, is that backyard racing rewards the runner who spends the least amount of energy, not the runner who gets back to camp the fastest. And ego plays a lot into this for the first 12 yards. where those fast runners run way too fast in the backyard, and that's why they don't make it past 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. I had multiple conversations with a few runners from the backyard that I ran in May and then last October about saying like, hey, my friend, I was running with my friend at the backyard and we were cruising. It was super easy, 8:30 per mile, but my friend didn't make it past yard 8. Like, he was completely toast. How and why is that? And we had to have this conversation about like, yes, although this is a super easy pace for you, you're still using up unnecessary energy. And I want it to, like, when I think about the first 12 yards, I don't want, like, the person who wins is unnoticed. They seem boring at the beginning because they are so slow. They are running so easy. They're hiking the uphills. They're just chill because they know the race hasn't even started yet and they need to conserve energy and they need to keep it super easy and use up less energy than the people who are running fast right now. So what I recommend for the first half of your simulation is walk every uphill, jog the flats, jog the downhills. Keep the effort so that it is frustratingly easy. That's one of the hardest things about the backyard and about a backyard simulation is if you do a backyard simulation, let's say for 4 hours, it's going to seem very, very easy. And you're going to say, oh my gosh, I only ran 16, 17 miles in 4 hours with the backyard pacing. Again, it's not about a test of fitness. It's figuring out the pacing when you're doing a shorter simulation like that. And then when you, let's say, get into 6 to 8 hours, then you're really focused on like, okay, how does my gut feel? How do I feel in terms of fueling and hydration? Because those are getting into time lengths that you have not done for long runs in training. Aim to get back to camp with somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes before the next yard. Again, it can be very easy to go out for your first yard in training if you haven't done the backyard pacing before and come in with 20 to 15 minutes left and it's still going to feel really easy. I want it to feel even easier. I want you to walk more out there. If it's a flat course, you're going to have to figure out a walk run strategy that brings you in with about 5 to 10 minutes left. And then in the second half of your simulation, I want you to intentionally shorten that turnaround time. So do not come in with 7 minutes left. I want you to come in with about 3 to 5 minutes left. Not because being rushed is a good thing, but I want you to practice being calm. I want you to show yourself, prove to yourself that you can do the things that you need to do within that amount of time and you're not frantic and chaotic, because then that leads to people DNFing because they forget things and they can't calm down and reset after that. So practice a shorter turnaround time so you get used to that. The further you get into the backyard, your yard lengths are going to increase and that turnaround time is going to decrease. And I want you to remember that you still have time when you go from 10 minutes to 8 minutes to 6 minutes to 4 minutes to 3 minutes to 2 minutes. You still have time. Do not leave time on the clock on race day. And that's what this shorter turnaround time in your simulation is going to help you realize that, okay, yes, time flies, but at the same time it moves slowly and you have time to get more hydration, get more fuel, maybe change a pair of socks or whatever. But you have to practice it. You have to practice because the default is to panic. And that's where I see a lot of people DNF in backyard ultras is when their lap times start to get slower. They think they're done. I only have 4 minutes left, or my lap times are getting shorter, and then they quit. 4 minutes is plenty of time to get done what you need to get done if you've practiced it. Okay? You want to do it. You want to know what you need to do. You know what doesn't need to be done. And that confidence comes from routine and practicing it and from familiarity. The only caveat here is if you're going to have crew on race day, it's a little different if you're doing this backyard simulation by yourself. So I had one athlete who did an overnight backyard simulation, and she had her, let me think about this. She had her sister and then one person who was going to crew her at the backyard be there because they were all local. So they were able to run through that with her as well. But it's a little bit different if you're doing a simulation solo and you're going to have crew. So that's also just something to think about. The second skill is kind of what we were just talking about, is the transition. Most people think that the race happens in the course, and it does not. The race is won and lost in camp. Every unnecessary decision drains mental energy. Every minute that is spent wandering around looking for food, looking for a forgotten water bottle, trying to figure out where you put something, every last second decision, like, I remembered I wanted to do this, or I really should do this right now. It all adds up. The best backyard runners make camp automatic. Like, I tell my athletes before they even get back to camp that they should already know exactly what needs to happen. You have your baseline of what you need to do. More hydration, eat, grab more fuel for out on the course, and then you have a sock change. You have a foot care routine of every 5 yards or 6 yards, you're changing socks. And then every 12 hours, you're changing shoes. And when you hit sunset, you're changing into dry clothes. And when you hit sunrise, you're changing into a different pair of clothes. Like, you have your routines set in place and you don't stray from them. I don't care if your feet feel just fine. You have no blisters, no foot problems at all. You still change your socks when you said you're going to, because you never know what's going to happen in 2 hours. Foot care during a race is preventative. Reaction to it is going to leave you with some pain. Like, when I see runners react to foot care, it's because there are problems, right? Like, if they decided before the race that they're going to change their shoes and their socks every 5 hours, and they're going to put new salty britches on every 5 hours, and they decided on race day that after the 5th yard everything felt fine and they did not change their socks, a lot of them end up having foot care problems before the next sock change. And then that's when they decide to change their socks, and it's already a problem there. So create routines, know exactly what needs to happen and when, and stick to it. So back to talking about knowing what you need to do back at camp before you even get there. When you have like 5 to 10 minutes left out on the course, start asking yourself questions. Start asking, like, doing a self-check of, okay, is anything stiff? Is anything hurting? Does anything need care right now? Do I need additional food? Like, are you hungry? If you're hungry, that's a problem. We need to get on top of that right away. If you're thirsty, that's a problem. You're already dehydrated. We need to fix that. Grabbing food, grabbing hydration, that's part of your routine already. But is there anything additional that you need? Do you need to use the bathroom? Do you need more anti-chafe on your legs, under your arms? If you're wearing a vest, like, is that a problem? Do you need dry clothes? Do you need another layer going into the night? Did you not warm up like you expected yourself to? What's the weather like? Is it super hot? Do you need more ice? Do you need sunscreen? Do you need to grab chapstick because you left it in your vest back at camp because it's so hot out and you've just been carrying a bottle? What does your crew need to have waiting for you? When you arrive back at camp, there shouldn't be any more thinking to do. You should just be able to execute it. And I love also practicing the whistle routine. So imagine hearing the 3-minute whistle. You're golden. You can still sit in your chair. If you plan to do a shoe and or sock change, start doing that if you haven't already. You hear the 2-minute whistle. Wrap up your food. Make sure that your shoes and socks are as you want them. Has your crew given you everything that you need? You still don't need to panic right now. If you're going to be wearing a jacket, start putting on your jacket. You hear that 1 minute whistle. You still have time, but you should start collecting all your stuff, standing up and walking over to the starting corral. You're done messing around. Just, you don't have to rush. You don't have to panic, but you want to be in that starting corral once you hear that 1-minute whistle. You want to be walking and getting your way there. It's all about efficiency. The goal is to make race day feel boring. Your job is to run and to eat and drink. That's your job. Make the course your home. Boring is efficient. So let's talk about nutrition since we've mentioned it. Treat this as one giant nutrition experiment. Don't just eat. I want you to observe. Like, don't just go through the actions of doing all these things. Track what you ate. You can either have it written down ahead of time and then make notes of what you actually did, or write it down as you're going. The thing that I love to do is to take pictures because you have the timestamp and you don't have to write anything down. It's a simple take one picture and everything is documented, right? Think about how much you're eating, carbs, protein, a little bit of fat, electrolytes. We can include fluids in there. How did your stomach feel? What actually sounded good? Depending on what time of day that you're doing your simulation, what was the weather like? What sounded good when it was hot? What sounded good when it was cold? What sounded good at night? One thing that really surprises runners is how dramatically their food preferences change overnight or when it's cold out. So something that you were loving during the day, you're not going to want it in the middle of the night at 2 a.m., at 4 a.m. Think of more comfort foods and warm foods for night. Something to practice. And it's something to just think about when you think about doing a backyard simulation or just different long runs in general, is what time of day do you need to practice at? What are you looking to get out of this run? What are you looking to practice? What are you looking to simulate? Because that's going to help you a lot too with deciding what actually needs to be done and when. So sometimes, like, I don't ever recommend or encourage runners to skip sleep because it is our number one recovery tool for both our mind and our body. But it's also a part of ultras. Like, if you're expecting to go far, you're going to run through the night. So what are some other ways that you can practice running through the night? You could do a long run starting at sunset and running until midnight or 1 a.m. or so. So you can still get sleep. You can still get sleep, right? You could start super early in the morning, start at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and run through sunrise. The thing about doing a night or an evening after work run is you have a full day on your feet. You have a full day of eating. And that can also help mimic fueling after a full day of running. Although, like, you don't have the exertion level there, but you have food in your stomach versus waking up, eating breakfast, and then going out for a long run. So there's just a lot of things to think about, things that you can practice. A lot of things that people are surprised about night running is mashed potatoes, oatmeal, pancakes. Those more comfort foods sound really, really good, and their sports nutrition products aren't something that they necessarily want to eat. But a lot of times they still can get down, like Tailwind or gels, versus some of the more sugary foods and snacks that they've been eating throughout the day, throughout the afternoon. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about in terms of nutrition? I don't want you to figure these things out during your race. That's why we want to practice them. Like, discover them now. Think about what are all the possibilities of things that I could eat? What have I seen at different races? What have I heard about? There's lots of different pictures of aid stations. Ask the race director if they're planning to have an aid station, what they're going to have. So there's some things you could practice with. At Duff Dog Backyard Ultra in October in Laverne, Minnesota, which is a bronze ticket race this year, Dave Duffy, the race director, brings in pizza. He has crock pots of different hot foods, mashed potatoes, broth. In the morning, there's pancakes or sausage. There's bacon. There's all these different foods that sometimes they change from year to year, but then there's also the staples. So reach out and practice with that. Okay, Dave said he's going to bring pizza in at 10 p.m. I'm going to try to eat pizza because that sounds really good right now when I'm not running. But I'm going to bring pizza to my backyard simulation and I'm going to test it out and see how it sits with my stomach. Okay? Also realize that just because it works one time doesn't mean that it's going to work every time for you. So it may work really well during your simulation and not work on race day. And that's where our ability to shift and pivot and problem solve comes into play. So your simulation is this big puzzle, right? You're problem solving and you're thinking of different solutions, even if things work. So have like a A, B, C, D, E backup plan. So this is the other thing. A lot of people focus on carbs, right? Which are absolutely a priority. But when it comes to ultra running, because we're out there for so long, we also need to make sure that we're getting in like 5 to 10 grams of protein per hour. So that's something you should practice with in your long runs, even though your long runs are shorter, okay? So practice taking in 5 grams of protein during your 3-hour long run just to get used to it. Train your gut and then increase that a little bit if you do well. If you have more muscle mass, aim for the top end of that. It's gonna benefit you. It's about recovery out on the course during the ultra. If you are racing beyond 24 hours, practice. Don't guess. If you're going, like, I would say if you're expecting to go 24 plus hours, there's a big difference between 24 hours and 48 hours, right? Everyone says the first 24 hours of a backyard are the hardest. And everyone is going through the same feelings. If you're expecting, like, let's say you have experience in the backyard and you've done 18 hours, 24 hours, 32 hours, and your next like big goal, let's say, is 48 hours, you may want to do a 24-hour simulation just to kind of figure it out. But the length of your simulation all kind of depends on your goals, your fitness level, your current fitness level, and what you want to do on race day. So you can kind of simulate it and get into these situations and problem solve without completely overdoing it. Okay, so when it comes to gear, nothing magical happens on race day. If you haven't practiced with it, don't plan on using it. Practice with it first so you know how it works, because you can get extremely frustrated out there. And the backyard is primarily about mindset, right? Like, yes, you have to have the fitness, but you have to have a strong mind in order to keep going hour after hour and after hour. So if you get annoyed by the waist belt that you just bought and you haven't practiced with it yet, don't use it. Use what's worked. Get it ahead of time so that you have enough time to practice with it for a couple weeks so that you know how it works and that it's not going to annoy you. But if there's something out there that's going to annoy you, or that you don't know how to use, or you haven't tested out in terms of nutrition and hydration, just don't plan on using it. Practice it in your backyard simulation or in your training run so you know how it works first. Figure out how you're going to carry nutrition, how are you going to carry fluids, where does your phone go? A lot of races require that as one of your things that you're carrying. Where are your lights going? Practice shoe changes. Know how long it takes to change your socks. Know how long it takes to change your shoes, or both at the same time. Think about layer changes. Think about battery changes. Think about charging. The goal is not to just decide what works. It's deciding exactly how you're going to make those changes. Decision fatigue is real, and you want to limit the amount of decisions that you have to make on race day. It's also one of the biggest benefits about the crew, or having a crew, is they are your brain. They do the thinking, they do the decision making. You just need to sit there and eat what they give you based on what you kind of practice, and they're going to help you problem solve if and when things start to falter from the plan. The fewer decisions you have to make in the middle of the night, the better off you're going to be. So one thing that I like to do in terms of gear, because gear is not just your waist belt and your vest and your shoes and your clothing and your headphones and your phone. It's not just what you're running with, right? It's your tent setup. It's your tent, it's your organization, it's your collection of shoes that you're bringing with, it's your 3 drawer system or your shoe hanger, however you're organizing all your fuel, your table, your entire setup is your gear. One of the best pieces of advice that I've heard is set up your tent, whatever you're going to use, and figure out how you're going to set it up before race day, like well in advance. Some people set it up in their basement so they can look at it all the time, but get used to how it's going to be set up. So that's one less thing to think about on race day. And everything is, it's like walking into your house when you've had the furniture in place and you know where everything is, right? Like I can walk around our house without hitting without hitting anything in the middle of the night. No light whatsoever. I know where things are. That's how your camp should feel. You should know where everything is. It should feel like home. Practice. Figure out what's going to work best. Is a 3 drawer system going to work best for you? Is having things out on the table going to work best for you? Is a shoe organizer going to work best for you? Is one of the toolboxes that has all the different compartments in it going to be best for you? Figure that out. Practice with the gear. Practice with your setup. Figure out what's going to work best for you. That's not something you have to do during the simulation. It's something you can do well ahead of time to figure it out. And then if you have a spot you can set it up for your simulation, go for it. But it's something to think about and to practice and to kind of tweak as you go. All right, so let's talk about the night. Something that everyone talks about. Night running deserves its own practice session. Like we were talking about doing an after work run, right, until like midnight, or doing a long run starting at 1 a.m. and running until sunrise. There's so much to it, right? Everything changes. Your vision changes. Your depth perception changes. The trail feels different. You feel like you're running a lot faster than you are, depending on the terrain. The temperature can drop. Your mood changes. Everything's kind of tunnel vision. You've been running for how many ever hours, depending on what time your race starts. You're running on tired legs, a tired brain. Your appetite changes. Your brain starts to tell you weird stories. You hear things you can't see. You notice all of it, right? Do your lights give you enough coverage? Are they too bright? Are they too focused? Are they not focused enough? Are they not bright enough? You suddenly start tripping over roots that you're like, was that even there before? A lot of things happen at night. What foods actually sound good after midnight? This is not just about surviving the night. It's about it's about removing surprises. So if you have not ran when fatigued at dark, do that. The one mistake that I see a lot of runners make is they say, I run in the morning when it's dark out for most of the year. I run when it's dark out. That is very different than running at 10 p.m. when your race started at 6 a.m. Like you've already been out there for 14 hours, right? Running at 10 p.m. when you're tired, maybe hydration is a little off, maybe nutrition is a little off, your feet are starting to hurt. It's very different than running at 5 a.m. for a training run during the week or your long run. So think about those things and put yourself in the position to actually practice it. This does not have to be done during the backyard, during a simulation. It definitely can be, but this is something you can practice. Again, I think the best example is to do it a long run after work. Start at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., depending on the time of year that you're doing it and when sunset is, and then run for a few hours into the dark while you are tired after a full day of work or a full day of doing whatever. Again, I think that's the best example of, or one of the best ways to practice running in the dark when you're already fatigued and you have a full day of eating under your belt. Okay, next is mindset. This is the biggest part about the backyard, right? This is the biggest lesson of the entire simulation, of paying attention to, where does your mind go? Where does your mind go when you're tired? What do you think about? Do you get bored from running the same loop after hour after hour after hour? What stories are you telling yourself? When something goes wrong, how quickly do you spiral? How quickly do you switch to problem solving mode? Something will go wrong in your backyard. It always does. It can be nutrition that's worked for you for the last 5 years on your long runs. And suddenly, race day, you don't want that fuel. You can't stomach that fuel. It can be the shoes that have worked for you for hundreds and thousands of miles. Something will and always goes wrong. Your stomach will feel weird, so then you skip eating. You'll get blisters. Your light will die. You'll forget something. That's ultra running, right? The runners who succeed aren't the ones who avoid problems. They're the ones who solve problems quickly. Whenever something goes wrong, replace why is this happening with what's my next best decision? What is the next best thing that I can do? That question is going to keep you moving forward. Asking why is this happening puts you in a victim mindset and keeps you stuck. Another thing that you want to think about in terms of mindset is practicing resetting every single yard. So if something bad happened, or if you're bored, or you were in your head in the last yard, don't carry that next one. Don't carry that one into the next yard, right? Treat every hour as a fresh race. Maybe it was awful. Like, who cares? Move on. Reset. Restart. That yard is over. You get another chance in 60 minutes. Backyard racing rewards short memories. And finally, I want you to keep notes. Seriously, use a voice recorder, take pictures, write it down if you have someone helping you. Take notes. Take notes of lap times, of food, of hydration, of energy levels. Rate your mood. That is huge right there. You can see downward trends. You can see upward trends based on what you're taking in, based on sunrise and sunset times. How's your stomach feeling? How are your legs feeling? What worked? What would you change for next time? These notes become your race strategy. These notes help you in training figure out what you need to work on for race day. They're worth more than 10 miles or another 10 hours of training. They are worth gold. And when your backyard simulation is over, I want you to say, like, okay, instead of saying how many hours did I last, how many hours did I run, I want you to ask, if this race kept going, if my backyard simulation kept going, what would stop me first? Would it be pacing? Would it be nutrition? Would it be your feet? Would it be fatigue in your legs? Stiffness, sleepiness, transition time, the course? Like, are you not prepared for rolling hills or sharp, steep uphills and downhills? Is it boredom? That's your answer. That's what you need to focus on. That's what you need to figure out in your training for race day. Because once you identify that first crack in your system, you know exactly what needs to be improved. Okay? So I want you to, I have a list of questions I'm going to kind of go through. These are questions you can ask yourself after your backyard simulation, but also after your backyard ultra, when you want to figure out, okay, like, what do I actually need to do in order to improve next time, okay? So let me see if I can get this pulled up on my screen so I can read some of the questions for you. Okay, so in terms of pacing, after your backyard simulation, I want you to ask yourself, at any point, did I feel like I was working? Now, I'm going to put an asterisk here. If the answer is no, if the answer is I was frustrated because it didn't feel like work, that's a good thing. Remember, this is not a test of fitness. This is trying to figure out all the other things. And if at a point you answered yes, like, yes, I felt like I was working after 8 hours, then that right there is your key to, like, okay, this isn't necessarily a test of fitness, but this shows you that there needs to be more fitness built for race day. A lot of that comes from, um, again, I don't know what your training looks like, but a lot of times that comes from strength training because that increases your capacity, that increases your load and your ability to keep going further in ultra distances. And then thinking about what your long runs and your overall training looks like throughout the week. Do you need to rearrange your training? Again, there's so many different ways. Everyone's training is different. Everyone's actual training looks different than what was planned. So it's hard to answer that question on what to fix. If you said, yes, there was a point at which I felt I was working, but I don't want you to be discouraged if you said, no, there was not a point at which I felt like I was working and I'm frustrated by that. It's a good thing that if you did a 12 or a 14 or 18 hour simulation and you didn't feel like it was work, it's a very good thing. It's a very good sign that you can go far in the backyard. And that it's more of the nutrition, the mindset, and some other aspects, these skills that we've been talking about that you need to just continue to work on to go further in the backyard. Okay, back to these questions about pacing. Could you have gone slower while still making the cutoff comfortably? Like, were you coming in with 10 to 12 to 14 minutes left? Could you have gone slower? For that, the answer is usually yes, unless you're trying to like do a bathroom or a clothes change or whatever. But that's not every hour, right? So think about that. And did you find yourself speeding up to keep up with others? Did you find yourself running faster than you would have liked to because you wanted to run with others? If you were alone, what pace do you think you could naturally have ran and have settled into? When did your lap time start drifting, if at all? Again, depending on what your goals are for the backyard, but if you want to go really far, it's a good thing if the lap times did not decrease. It's a good time if the backyard simulation did not feel like work itself and you're really more focused on nutrition and mindset and hydration and transition times and everything. When it comes to camp, here are some questions that you can ask yourself. Were you ever rushing? And if so, why? What tasks took longer than expected? What could your crew have done that could make camp smoother for you? What did not need to happen at camp? Like, were you putting things in your vest back at camp when you really could have done those back out on the course once you started? Did you ever forget anything before leaving? Did you feel disorganized? Were you like going back and forth between your tent grabbing things? And then how long did it take before you felt ready for the next lap? Like, were you sitting in your chair for 5 minutes, 2 minutes? Were you not able to sit down before like having to start? When it comes to nutrition and hydration after your simulation, ask yourself, were there any points during the simulation that you felt hungry? Were there any points when you felt thirsty? Take note of those. We need to fix those problems. All of this is data. Remember, we're collecting data. When were you eating because you were hungry, or was it because it was part of the plan? That's a big thing too, where runners can fall behind in the first 6 hours of the race, and then they're suddenly hungry when dinner time rolls around. And then they're eating more than they anticipated. And then some GI problems can come into play because you're eating a lot more at once while your body is working harder after a while of running. So just these are things to think about, right? And to problem solve with. Which foods sounded really good? Was anything difficult to chew or to swallow? Were there times that you didn't want to eat? How was your energy from hour to hour? Were there foods that you're like, oh, that does not sound good? When you are planning for your backyard simulation, if you're thinking about something that you're bringing, you're like, I don't know, it's probably going to be a no during your backyard simulation and on race day. So just leave that home then. But think about these things that are or are not tasting good while you're actually out there running. Also think about the timing of it. Some things may sound really good and are easy to eat the first few hours of your backyard simulation, but then 6 hours later they're not. Like, just think about that in terms of planning for race day. Thinking about how you feel, how your body feels. When and if did you first notice fatigue? Was it in your knees? Did you feel stiff? Was it in your feet? Was it in your legs? Did you feel the pounding of your quads on the downhills? Things to think about. Did anything tighten up after sitting? Were there any hot spots on your feet? How did your shoulders and arms feel carrying your bottles or carrying your gear or wearing a vest? If the simulation had continued after another 12 hours, what body part do you think would have become your biggest issue? Like, did you have any niggles, any stiffness? What has caused you problems in the past for other races? Would that, do you think, have become a problem after another 12 hours? In terms of night running, and if you're doing the simulation at night, or you could also just ask yourself these questions if you're doing a long run during the night to practice night running. Did your vision change as it got darker? Were there sections that slowed you down because you couldn't see well? Did your body temperature stay comfortable? Did your mood change after midnight? And did it seem to speed up or slow down? Did time seem to speed up or slow down overnight? The other thing to consider is your pacing. What did your pacing do once it got dark? If you're running in a wooded area with a narrow trail, it's going to feel like you're going really fast. You're probably going really slow. Our perception of how fast we're running we're actually running faster than we think. We're running slower than we actually think we are. We think we're running faster than we actually are when it's dark. So that's something to think about too, that it may be a shock. Do not panic. When you come in after your first night loop, you're like, I've been running 50-minute loops and I just came in at 52 or 53 minutes. Or you may notice that when you're out on the course. Do not panic. Just readjust. Or just keep it as is if you're feeling good. You still have plenty of time, and then you can get back to your 50-minute loops in the daylight, in the morning. Mindset. Again, this is like one of my favorite sections about backyard topics. When did your mind first start negotiating? Did you ever think, I'm ready to be done. I've done enough. What thoughts gave you energy? What thoughts drained your energy? What did you look forward to each hour? What were you thinking about during the last mile of each lap? Did you ever catch yourself thinking too far ahead? Were you present on each lap or mentally somewhere else? What would have made quitting feel tempting if the race kept going? Did you rely on other people to talk to or listen to, or podcasts or audiobooks or music? And when did you rely on them? And how long did you rely on them? Was it just to get you out of a little low, to get you back moving again, or did you stick with listening to it for a long time? When it comes to decision making, what surprised you? What decisions did you make repeatedly that could become automatic? Like, what systems could you create because of your decision making? If you race tomorrow, what would you do differently? What's one thing that you thought would matter that actually didn't? And what's one thing that you hadn't considered that suddenly feels important? So those are questions that I would consider after backyard simulation for figuring out what you need to practice in training or what adjustments you need to make before race day. And as you look towards your goal race, I want you to ask yourself these questions. What gives you confidence after this backyard simulation? What still makes you nervous? If your race lasted for 30 hours, what would be your biggest concern? If your race lasted 50 hours, what would be your biggest concern? One thing that a lot of your runners don't think about, but they realize that as they get closer to race, or when they realize that their potential is to go really far, they forget about crew and crew's time commitment. Like, if your race starts on Saturday morning, can your crew stay with you through Monday. That's a big thing to think about. If your race lasted 70 hours, what would be your biggest concern? What skill, not fitness, would most improve your performance? What is the weakest part of your current backyard system? Okay. And the last question that I want you to ask yourself after your simulation is, if your simulation had not ended when it did, what do you honestly believe would have been the first thing to stop you? Would it have been fatigue? Would it have been your mind because of how you're feeling? Would it have been your stomach? Would it have been because you were disorganized? Would it have been because you didn't have a crew? Boredom? Your mind telling that you've done enough? The thought that you have work on Monday? The thought of going home to help your spouse with the kids? Like, what was it? What would it have been to have stopped you first if the simulation had not ended? That's going to tell you something big about what to focus on next. All these questions are super valuable. All the data that you've collected, extremely valuable. Write them down. Keep them, journal, put them in a Word document. Keep them on your phone. Think about these things. Because asking yourself these questions is going to get you so much further on race day. So remember, your goal is not to see how fast you can cover 4.167 miles. Your goal is to see how little energy you can spend covering 4.167 miles. Every hill you choose to run instead of walk, every unnecessary surge, every extra step you didn't need to take, you're borrowing energy from the version of yourself that's going to be running tomorrow morning. Backyard racing is not about proving how fit you are. It's about protecting your future self. So if you're doing a backyard simulation soon, do not worry about how many yards you complete. Worry about how you learn. Worry about how much you learn. Because the runners who show up on race day with the fewest unanswered questions are usually the ones still standing long after everyone else has gone home. Now is your time to problem solve. Now is your time to create problems so you can problem solve before race day. So I hope this episode was helpful. Please reach out if you have any questions about doing a backyard simulation or giving me a little bit more background on your fitness level, your goals, what you're expecting to do in a backyard, so that we can kind of talk about like what you should maybe do in terms of time for a backyard simulation. Everyone's background is extremely important in deciding that, and I don't want to just give you a blanket statement of if X number of yards is your goal for race day, Y should be your backyard simulation distance. It all depends on who you are, what's realistic, what's a dream big goal, and what can kind of push you to the next level. So until next time, stay present, stay calm, and go one more hour. Thanks for tuning in to One More Hour. If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow so you don't miss the next yard, and share it with a runner who loves pushing their limits. I'd love to hear your own stories of going one more. Connect with me on Instagram at the One More Hour Podcast. And if you could leave a quick review, it'll help more runners find the show and keep going when they want to stop. Until next time, just go one more hour.